The first reason to skip Kirara is if you're not aiming at her Constellations as of right now. As a character that's releasing on rerun banners, I expect many players to look at her as a character to get just one copy of. While Kirara is quite functional at Constellation 0, since her shield basically gains no benefit the more copies you get of her, the same can be said regarding her offensive contribution. Specifically, Kirara's Constellation 4 is really good, because it turns her from a character that only applies Dendro on opponents during her few on-field instances during the rotation, into a character that can do that and consistently apply Dendro from off-field. While there are teams where this aspect isn't a necessity, like quick-swap quicken teams with Yai or Keqing, the Constellation 4 is really what makes her a flexible character, since it allows her to be used with long field time units like Sino with no issues, and just makes her a better fate for Nilou teams. It's not only the application, the Constellation 4 also adds quite a bit more damage to her kit, which shines on triple Dendro teams where that aspect is magnified. Additionally, her Constellation 6 is a flat team damage bonus for basically all teams she fits in, and especially favors quicken teams. Without these two constellations, I just don't expect her to be a significant enough upgrade over Yaya and Baiju on any composition to justify pulling for her. The second reason to skip Kirara is if you have no plans to get an Instructor set. This might sound like a bit of a silly reason, since after all, farming artifacts is a process you go through for every character. However, I can see how 4-star artifacts specifically might be an afterthought for most players, as in many cases they're just replaceable by 5-star options for sort of the same results. For example, giving Baiju the Clam set instead of Instructor has very similar results on all of his teams. For Kirara, it doesn't quite work like that. While she can use the Noblesse Oblige set on quicken teams that feature big attack scaling units, Instructor is for the most part her best option everywhere, and on some teams like Nilou it's even the only option. You might ask, what about Deepwood? Well, on most teams that focus on Dendro related damage, she's going to be paired with Nahida, who is just a more consistent applier of the Deepwood set effects on a wide AoE range, so I personally wouldn't take it away from her. There is one scenario where Kirara can use Deepwood or Gilded, and that's to increase her own damage output on teams that don't necessarily benefit from Instructor too much, like Sino Quicken, but that's a rather exclusive option since it requires your Kirara to build offensive stats and hold a 5-star weapon like Jade Cutter to deal enough damage for it to be worth. Overall, while Instructor doesn't make or break Kirara, it's a big factor that makes her competitive with other options like Yaya and Baiju, so missing on that can make a difference. The third reason to skip Kirara is if you're looking for a Hyperbloom or Burgeon driver. Through her elemental skill, Kirara can enter an on-field state where she'll continuously deal Dendro damage to opponents, on a standard internal cooldown basis. Theoretically, this could even make her compete with the like of Baiju and Alhaitham application-wise, especially if you have her Constellation 4. The issue, however, is that her attacks in this stance don't count as normal attacks, meaning she can proc the elemental burst hits of Yelan and Shincho, units that really make or break these teams. Alternatives would be Kokomi and burstless Shincho, but the results are quite depressing, as your bloom generation is basically halved, and you're also missing out on about 500,000 damage per rotation by removing Yelan and Shincho's raw damage from the equation. Overall, while her on-field capabilities combined with her survivability tools could make her look promising as a driver, this just ain't it. The fourth reason to skip Kirara is if you want to upgrade your Alhaitham or Tignari teams by switching to a triple Dendro lineup. While she's better than the likes of Baiju and Yaya in the role, since her damage potential is higher here, triple Dendro variants have never been particularly advantageous compared to double Dendro, double Electro. Specifically, Cookie is a defensive option that can do a little bit of damage as well, use the same sword utility options as Kirara, and provide a nice energy boost for the second Electro, which is typically Yae. While the Kirara variant can compete with the Cookie variant damage-wise if she's at high Constellation, double Electro lineups also come with the advantage that you're going to get more consistent Electro application on all opponents, which means more consistent Quicken application. This is a concern for variants of the team that only use Yae as the Electro applier, since her elemental skill attacks have random targeting, so they can easily miss some opponents if you're facing more than 3. I'm done for today. Of course, keep in mind that Kirara isn't bad by any means. This video is just to inform you of what could make her disappointing for your account. I'll be updating you on the reasons to pull for her tomorrow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time!